Pop quiz. If a stock doubled last year, do you feel it's due to cool off or destined to keep climbing? Either way, your brain just tried to trick you. Today on Insibook, we're turning Rolf Dobelli's The Art of Thinking Clearly into a rapid-fire bias detox, street-smart fixes for the tiny mental bugs that cause $1,000 mistakes. In the next few minutes, we'll speed-run everyday traps, survivorship bias, sunk cost, authority effect, confirmation bias, and pair each with a one-sentence antidote you can use at work, with money, and in life. You'll leave with a pocket checklist. Name it, label the bias, flip it, invert the question, check base rates, kill sunk costs, run an outside view, no jargon, no lectures, just clearer thinking on demand. If you make decisions, big or small, don't skip. By the end, you'll spot the trap, sidestep it, and choose better in seconds. Ready to think a little cleaner and win back your attention? Let's begin. Clear thinking begins with a small act of rebellion. You stop assuming your mind is a faithful camera and start treating it like a clever but unreliable storyteller. The storyteller is quick, persuasive, and constantly certain. It fills in gaps with plot and emotion, edits out the boring parts, and insists that the version it just narrated must be the truth because it feels true. That inner novelist helps you move through the world efficiently. Without it, you'd freeze at every decision. But it also leads you past the exit to reason more often than you notice. To think clearly is to learn the novelist's tricks, catch them on the page, and revise before the ink dries. What emerges is not a life without error, no one has that, but a life in which your mistakes cost less and teach more. The first trick to catch is the craving for stories that look neat and inevitable. Randomness offends the storyteller, so it stitches events into tidy arcs with heroes, villains, and morals. When a startup succeeds, we're presented with a narrative about vision and grit, as if 1,000,000 unseen variables and 1,000 near misses weren't co-authors. When an investment pays off, we congratulate our foresight. When it fails, we search for one fatal flaw that explains everything. This is story bias, the preference for sense-making over truth. A useful antidote is to ask what alternative stories fit the same facts and what facts the story leaves out. Clear thinkers keep a placeholder in their mind for chance. They don't let coherence masquerade as proof. The missing pieces often belong to the silent failures. Survivorship bias hides them. We study bestsellers to learn how to write, unicorns to learn how to build, and champions to learn how to win. The corpses of similar attempts, equally passionate, sometimes equally skilled, vanish from the record. If you only analyze the planes that returned from missions, you armor the wrong parts. If you only copy winners, you copy traits that may be irrelevant or even harmful. Thinking clearly means widening the sample. Examine the cemetery as carefully as the temple. Ask, how many tried and didn't make it? What did they do the same? What truly separates the few from the many? You won't enjoy the answer as much as a heroic tale, but it will save you from costly delusions. Even when the evidence is broad, the mind prefers agreement to accuracy. Confirmation bias is a home-cooked filter that accepts anything that flatters your current belief and blocks everything that threatens it. Once you hold a view about a diet, a policy, a person, your attention rearranges itself. You Google differently, you interpret neutrals as allies, you remember the hits and forget the misses. The cure is uncomfortable. Actively search for disconfirming evidence and reward yourself for finding it. Build rituals that force the confrontation. Devil's advocate briefs, pre-mortems, red teams, a friend mandated to disagree. You won't extinguish confirmation bias, but you can make it earn its keep. The mind also mistakes availability for importance. Whatever is vivid, recent, or emotional feels more frequent and more likely than it is. Read a string of headlines about shark attacks and beaches feel dangerous. Spend a day in an emergency room and you'll momentarily believe accidents are everywhere. This availability bias is amplified by modern media, which sells your attention by offering the spectacular and the alarming. Clear thinkers compensate with base rates and denominators. How many per million? Compared to what? What's the long-run trend? Those questions rescale your feelings to fit the world. Crowds provide comfort, which your mind misreads as evidence. Social proof tells you to do what others are doing because many people can't be wrong. Often this is harmless and even helpful. If a restaurant is full, the food probably isn't terrible. But when crowds are guessing about the future or ranking risks, they become echo chambers. Groupthink smothers dissent, and dissent is where accuracy lives. Clear thinking asks who these people are, how they're incentivized, and whether their information is independent. 10 people in the same room with the same newsfeed do not count as 10 independent judgments. Seek orthogonal inputs and treat consensus as a starting point for questions, not an endpoint for thought. Authority bias works the same trick with uniforms and titles. A confident expert can tilt your judgment far beyond the quality of their evidence. You defer not because the argument is strong, but because the badge glows brightly. Sometimes deference is efficient. We don't have time to verify every claim. But authority is a heuristic, not a proof. Ask for the chain of reasoning in your own words. Separate credentials from claims. Respect expertise without surrendering judgment. The white coat, the logo, the famous name, they deserve attention, not obedience. Contrast and framing nudge you more than you'd like to admit. A product that costs $200 feels cheap next to one priced at $800. A surgeon who says a procedure has a 90% survival rate sounds more reassuring than one who says it has a 10% mortality rate, though the numbers are identical. Anchors, numbers thrown into your orbit before a decision, pull your estimate toward them even when you know they're irrelevant. Clear thinking slows the moment down. Rewrite frames in their opposites and see if your preference holds. Strip away decoys and compare only the options you'd actually choose. Generate your own starting point before hearing anyone else's. When in doubt, ask, if I'd seen the options in a different order, would I still want this? Loss aversion and the status quo bias team up to keep you stuck. The pain of losing something is stronger than the pleasure of gaining something of equal value, and the state you're in acquires a halo simply because it is familiar. This duo fuels the sunk cost fallacy. You keep pouring resources into a failing path because you've already paid so much. But past costs are tuition, they don't change the future. The question is not, what did it cost me to get here? It's, if I started fresh today, would I choose this again? Clear thinkers cut cleanly. They mourn a loss once and move on, rather than paying interest on an error. Ownership distorts value. The endowment effect makes you demand more to give something up than you would have paid to acquire it. That distortion grows when identity is wrapped around possession, your project, your idea, your team. Combine endowment with loss aversion, and you get stubbornness that looks principled but is really just painless inaction disguised as loyalty. To counter it, borrow someone else's lens. Price your asset as if it were your neighbor's. Ask a neutral third party to assign value. Force yourself to consider the best alternative you could buy with the same resources. The answer will not always tell you to sell, but it will reveal the emotional surcharge you're paying. Scarcity and reciprocity are levers that move even skeptical minds. A disappearing offer feels more valuable than a stable one. A small gift silently obligates you to comply. Marketers use these forces because they work. You are not immune. The fix is to translate the feeling into the math. If an offer is worth it, it will remain worth it after the artificial deadline. If a gift changes your choice, the gift was not a gift. It was a fee. Step back, remove the countdown, and decide cold. If you still want it a day later, it may be a genuine preference and not a reflex. Commitment and consistency are virtues that, misapplied, become traps. After you publicly take a stance, the urge to behave consistently with that earlier statement rises. You defend a position long after contrary evidence arrives because admitting change feels like confessing weakness. This is ego as a sunk cost. Clear thinking reframes consistency. Be consistent with your values, not your past mistakes. Reserve the right to revise your mind in public. Applaud others when they do. If you never change your mind, it is unlikely you're learning. Regression to the mean is the quiet saboteur of cause and effect stories. Extreme performances tend to be followed by more ordinary ones. Praise a student after an exceptional test, and the next score usually drops. Scold after a terrible one, and the next rises. The mind invents a causal tale. Praise undermines, scolding motivates. In reality, extremes carry a large dose of luck. As luck recedes, results move toward average. Don't pay tuition to the ghost of regression. Judge processes over single outcomes, and beware of celebrating or punishing noise. Overconfidence makes almost every error worse. People are sure they're better than average drivers, investors, judges of character. They underestimate how long projects will take, how much they will cost, and how often they will change their mind. The planning fallacy survives repeated exposure because the inside view, picturing your own plan, feels concrete, while the outside view, looking at what happened to similar efforts, feels abstract. Clear thinking forces the outside view onto the table. Identify a reference class of comparable projects and borrow their timelines and budgets. Run a pre-mortem. Imagine the endeavor failed. List the reasons, preempt them. You won't kill overconfidence, but you can cage it. The illusion of control encourages you to see patterns in noise and causal influence where none exists. A lucky jersey, a specific seating chart, a dashboard full of irrelevant metrics, rituals and data create a satisfying sense of agency. In casinos and markets, this illusion empties pockets. In offices, it wastes hours on reports that comfort managers while hiding weak processes. Clear thinking differentiates between control and influence. Ask, which variables can I actually move? Which merely correlate with what I want? Spend effort on the levers, not the lights. Small samples are treacherous. The law of small numbers promises patterns where none survive scrutiny. You visit a tiny school with stellar test scores and conclude its method must be superior. You ignore that small groups bounce around more. You run an A/B test for a day and fall in love with a blip. Patience is a form of intelligence. Let the sample grow and the mirage evaporates. When in doubt, assume variability is higher than you feel and wait for more evidence than you want. Correlation is not causation, but our narrative hunger keeps forgetting. You notice that two variables move together and weave a story about one producing the other. Sometimes that's right, often they share a third cause or the direction is reversed. The mind longs for arrows, the world offers webs. Untangle them with tools, randomize trials when feasible, natural experiments when not, instrumental variables when you must. In everyday life, cultivate a habit of alternative explanations. Ask what else could account for the pattern. Be suspicious of single-factor tales in complex systems. Representativeness bias lures you with stereotypes. A person who looks the part is judged to be the part. A sequence that resembles your idea of randomness is judged random even when it isn't. Base rates vanish from view. The antidote is to force the base rate into the first sentence of any judgment. Out of 1,000 people, how many are librarians? Out of all startups, how many reach profitability? Then, and only then, add the individuating detail. If the detail swings your judgment too far from the baseline, pull it back. Hindsight bias powders the face of history. After an event happens, it seems obvious that it would, and you forget how uncertain it felt before. Lessons crystallize, confidence swells, and you overfit your explanations to a single path the world might have taken among many. Write down your predictions before outcomes arrive. Score them honestly. Keep a decision journal that records what you believed, what evidence you had, and how you felt. Without a record, hindsight will doctor your memory, and you'll learn the wrong things. Outcome bias is its cousin. We judge decisions by results rather than by the quality of the process and the information available at the time. A reckless bet that pays looks wise, a prudent course that fails looks timid. Over time, this punishes good decision-making in uncertain environments and rewards noise. To counter it, pre-agree on process and criteria. Evaluate by whether the process was followed. When a loss arrives, run a blameless post-mortem focused on what you could have known and controlled. When a win arrives, ask whether you were lucky and how to avoid confusing luck for skill. News is a special category of distortion because it hijacks your availability bias, rewards your impatience, and inflames your emotions. Most news is noise, events you cannot influence about people you do not know that will not matter in a month. It crowds out quiet, important reading, and the deep work that compounds. Clear thinkers set a strict diet. They prefer slow signal over fast noise. Books, long-form analysis, primary data. When they do consume news, they do it deliberately and then get back to building. You don't need more information, you need better filters and longer attention. Incentives bend behavior. If you want to understand an outcome, study the rewards and penalties shaping the actors, not their press releases. Perverse incentives produce perverse results. Pay by volume, get lower quality, rank by a single metric, get gamesmanship. Beware your own incentives too. They bias what you see and what you tell yourself. The cleanest defense is to design incentives that align with the overall aim and to publish them. When you cannot, adjust your interpretation. Don't ask what people say they value, ask what they're paid for. Mental accounting lets you treat dollars differently depending on which mental pocket they occupy. You splurge with a tax refund while pinching pennies elsewhere. You gamble house money more freely than hard-earned savings. Dollars are fungible, your emotions are not. Collapse the accounts when you make serious decisions. A dollar saved by renegotiating a bill is the twin of a dollar earned. Conversely, separate accounts can serve you when used intentionally. fun money that spares you guilt, a giving account that reminds you to be generous, an emergency fund that prevents panic. Hyperbolic discounting pulls you toward immediate rewards and away from larger, delayed ones. You intend to exercise, study, save, and then choose the couch, the feed, the purchase. The present self is a charming liar who promises the future self will pay the bill. Guard against it with commitment devices. Automate transfers, hide the sweets, set app limits, schedule the work, add friction to temptations, and remove friction from virtues. Design the environment so that the easiest action is the one you'll be proud of later. Effort justification and cognitive dissonance make beliefs bow to behavior. After you invest time or pain into something, you elevate its value to avoid the discomfort of admitting waste. Initiations, hazing, boot camps, these rituals know what they are doing. You can use a softened version to your advantage by attaching meaningful, voluntary effort to goals you want to cherish. You can protect yourself by remembering that pain paid is not proof of value. If the results aren't there, the effort was training, not validation. Authority of the first explanation is sticky. The first story you hear colonizes the field, later corrections must dislodge it. In negotiations and debates, whoever frames the issue first sets the anchor. As a listener, delay judgment and collect alternative frames. As a speaker, earn the right to frame by being fair to the other side first. You lower defenses and increase the chance your frame will be tested rather than rejected. Because attention is scarce, cluttering it with low-value choices drains your judgment for high-value ones. Decision fatigue turns you into a miser with willpower by afternoon. Reduce needless decisions with routines and defaults. Wear a uniform of your choosing, batch small tasks, use checklists for repeatable processes so your slow mind is saved for where it's needed most. Good checklists catch stupid mistakes, great checklists keep expertise focused on the non-routine. The hedonic treadmill tricks you into chasing upgrades that quickly become the new baseline. You adapt to almost everything: income, housing, status, gadgets, and your happiness returns to trend. Instead of pouring attention into status races, pour it into experiences that resist adaptation, relationships, mastery, meaning, contributions. Clear thinkers aren't ascetics, they're editors. They curate what occupies their focus because they know attention is life. When choices are many, paralysis lurks. The paradox of choice says that more options can make you less satisfied because you fear missing out on the best. You compare against imagined alternatives and downgrade what you chose. Pre-commit to good enough criteria. Satisfice rather than maximize in domains where the marginal gain from searching is tiny and the marginal cost in time and angst is large. Save maximization for the very few choices that matter most, and even then, set a time limit. Regret shrinks when you decide on purpose. Reciprocal altruism, I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine, is the glue of communities, but your mind sometimes applies it where it doesn't belong. You keep toxic ties alive because of favors owed, stay in misfit roles because someone took a chance on you years ago, avoid necessary change because history weighs more than the future. Gratitude and obligation are not the same. You can honor a kindness and still leave a situation that no longer fits. Clarity separates appreciation from entrapment. WYSIATI, what you see is all there is, haunts almost every bias. Your mind tells itself a complete story from incomplete data and moves on. Counter it with a house habit. Before finalizing a conclusion, list the unknowns out loud. What important data could change this view? Which voices are missing? What would have to be true for the opposite to be correct? The questions won't always find new facts, but they will humble your certainty. Practical hygiene for thinking follows from these patterns. Slow down when stakes are high and reversibility is low. Use the outside view for plans and the inside view for execution. Prefer base rates over anecdotes. Separate process from outcome in your evaluations. Bundle risks into portfolios rather than facing them one by one. Pre-commit to rules that govern recurring decisions. No extended warranties, no debt for depreciating consumer goods, no negotiating by email when emotions run hot. Keep a tiny brag book of times you changed your mind in the light of new evidence. It rewires shame into pride. And write things down: predictions, reasons, doubts. Journals rescue you from hindsight and checklists rescue you from yourself. Finally, cultivate a stance of cheerful skepticism. Not the kind that sneers at everything, but the kind that smiles, asks for the denominator, and is willing to be persuaded. Assume your brain will keep offering shortcuts, thank it, then verify. Assume your feelings will claim center stage, give them a chair without handing them the microphone. Assume luck will scramble results, build processes that survive noise and harvest signals slowly. The goal isn't to win arguments, it's to make fewer unforced errors, to spend less time fixing avoidable mistakes, and to direct more of your life toward things that compound. If you practice this stance, your days won't become an endless forensic analysis. They'll become lighter, you'll stop buying problems you don't need, you'll tell cleaner stories in which chance is a character and not an afterthought. You'll choose better anchors and ignore more bad frames. You'll cut losses sooner and hold gains longer. You'll see crowds as data, not destiny. You'll be kinder to your past self because you'll know how easy it is to be fooled, and you'll be stricter with your present self because now you can see the strings. Clear thinking doesn't eliminate error, it changes your relationship to it. Instead of defending your mistakes, you'll learn from them faster. Instead of marching behind your mind's first story, you'll recruit a second and a third. Instead of drifting with every current, you'll steer. And that's the quiet prize hidden inside these ideas. Not cynicism, but freedom. Freedom from the push and pull of tricks that once moved you without your consent. Freedom to pause between stimulus and response. Freedom to spend your effort where it matters and let the rest go. Freedom to build a life that isn't at the mercy of every headline, every crowd, every clever nudge, every seductive story. You'll still be human, gloriously, fallibly human, but you'll be a human who knows their mind well enough to choose, and that makes all the difference.